The fall of the Ottoman Empire is not a story of one day or one battle. It is the story of a giant slowly sinking under the weight of centuries, a story where pride, betrayal, ambition, and destiny collide. Imagine an empire that once thundered across continents, an empire whose armies marched from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia, whose sultans raised monuments crowned with gold, whose fleets dominated seas, whose name alone was enough to make kings tremble. But no empire, no matter how mighty, can outrun time. And time had already begun its quiet attack long before anyone noticed. Our story begins in the late 1600s, when the Ottomans were still powerful, but the winds of change were blowing silently across Europe. While Europe embraced science, industry, and modernization, the Ottoman court was sinking deeper into palace politics, internal rivalries, and the suffocating comforts of tradition. Sultans who once led armies became rulers who barely left the palace. Advisors who once guided the empire with wisdom were replaced by flatterers who fed the throne with lies. The state machinery, once sharp and disciplined, became slow, rusted, and corrupt. The janissaries, the elite warriors who once shaped Ottoman victories, were no longer soldiers hungry for honor. They turned into a political mafia, threatening any sultan who dared reform them. They protected their privileges fiercely, even if the empire burned around them. For decades, the empire stood like a mountain on the surface, but inside, the cracks were spreading. Then came the rise of nationalism, a fire that burned from the Balkans to Arabia. The Greeks were first. They rose in rebellion, and suddenly the empire realized it no longer held the hearts of the people under its rule. Serbs followed, Bulgarians followed, Romanians followed. Every uprising took a piece of the empire with it. Every loss weakened its spirit. Every betrayal shook its foundations. European powers, Britain, France, Russia, played their own dangerous game. They encouraged these rebellions not out of love for liberty, but because they wanted to carve up the Ottoman territories for themselves. The Ottoman Empire became the sick man of Europe, a term whispered in royal courts, a sign that the world was waiting for its final breath. But the empire was not ready to die yet. Reformers rose, the Tanzimat reforms, new laws, new armies, new schools. They tried desperately to pull the empire into the modern world, but the old forces resisted. Conservatism battled progress. Corrupt officials blocked change. Religious leaders feared Western influence. The result was chaos. Debt crushed the empire next. To survive, the Ottomans borrowed money from Europe, and these loans eventually became chains. European powers no longer just influenced Ottoman politics, they controlled it. Meanwhile, the sultans struggled to maintain authority. Sultan Abdulhamid II tried to centralize power, spy on enemies, crush revolts, and resist European influence, but conspiracies grew everywhere. Even those who wanted reform began plotting against him. The young Turks, idealistic, ambitious, and hungry for modernization, rose in revolt. They forced Abdulhamid to reinstate the constitution. They promised progress. They promised rebirth. But they themselves were divided, inexperienced, and overwhelmed by the empire's massive problems. It was like trying to repair a collapsing palace while its walls were crumbling in every direction. And then came the greatest disaster of all, the Balkan Wars. In just 2 years, the empire lost almost all its European territories. Centuries of glory vanished like smoke. Cities that had flown the Ottoman flag for generations were gone. Millions of Muslims fled toward Anatolia, carrying stories of massacres, horror, and loss. The empire was bleeding, exhausted, humiliated. The world watched, convinced the end was near. And then World War I exploded. The Ottomans joined the war hoping to regain honor and lost lands. They believed the alliance with Germany would save them. Instead, it dragged them into the deadliest storm in history. Ottoman soldiers fought with unmatched bravery Gallipoli, Kut al-Amara, the Caucasus, but bravery alone could not defeat starvation, lack of resources, outdated weapons, and internal disunity. While armies fought on the front lines, foreign agents ignited revolts in Arab lands. Allies invaded from every side. Armenian rebellions and wartime paranoia led to catastrophic decisions inside the empire. Meanwhile, famine ravaged Syria and Lebanon. Cities starved, villages emptied. Millions suffered while leaders argued and power struggles tore the government apart. By 1918, the Ottoman Empire was a shadow, its economy ruined, its military shattered, its lands invaded, its capital surrounded. The armistice of Mudros ended the war, but not the suffering. Allied powers landed in Constantinople, marched through its streets, seized its ships, and dictated its future. The Treaty of Sevres carved the empire into pieces. Greece would take the west, Armenia the east, France and Britain the south, Italy the southwest, and Istanbul itself would be placed under international control. It was the moment when the Ottomans realized the empire was not just dying, it was being erased. But from this darkness rose one final flame, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. A commander who refused defeat, who rallied what remained of the Ottoman army, who united the Turkish people for one last, desperate, heroic stand. The Turkish War of Independence began. While the empire lay collapsing, a new nation was taking shape. Every battle won, every inch reclaimed, every sacrifice made pushed the empire further into history. The world that emerged from that war in 1923 was not the Ottoman Empire, it was the Republic of Turkey. The Ottoman dynasty, which had ruled for more than 600 years, was abolished. The last sultan, Mehmed VI, left Istanbul on a lonely British ship, looking back at the city his ancestors once ruled with unstoppable power. And that was the moment the Ottoman Empire truly fell. Not with a dramatic explosion, but with a slow, painful decline, corruption eating its institutions, nationalism tearing its lands, foreign powers exploiting its weakness, outdated systems resisting change, economic collapse crushing its strength, and a disastrous world war delivering the final blow. Its fall is a reminder that even the mightiest empires do not die in a single moment. They fade, struggle, and crumble until a new world rises in their place. The Ottoman Empire collapsed not because one enemy defeated it, but because centuries of internal decay met the unstoppable force of a changing world. And in that collapse, a new nation was born, but the echoes of the empire, its culture, its legacy, its architecture, its influence, its memory still live across continents. Its fall closed one of the greatest chapters in human history, but its story remains eternal.